Hey there, my name is Shane Craddock, and this is the Inner Edge podcast, where I share a different take on how to lead and live a sustainable high-performance life. Over the course of different episodes, I'm going to challenge the belief that tension, stress, and struggle are essential to success and creativity. My experience is that there's an easier way, there's a better way, and indeed there's an essential way that we need to explore for the times that we live in. So let's go ahead, let's jump in and explore. Hi there. Today's episode, I'm going to explore a little bit around peak performance. There's different ways you can express this. It could be about optimal performance, being at your best, high performance. I think it's an area that is ripe for maybe misinterpretation. Also, if you have a room of 10 people and say, hey, what's peak performance or what's high performance? I'm pretty sure you're going to get a different answer. I mean, I've seen that with clients. I've seen it with myself. Dealing with people, that you just get a huge variation in different answers. For me, peak performance is really moving you into your best performance state so that you can create your peak results. And it's an area that I'm fascinated with. You could say it's kind of just moving you into a different gear, the peak performance gear. So it's something for a lot of people that it kind of happens every so often, but it's not there consistently or not consistently enough. And that's an area of interest that's very much at the center of my work in terms of bringing more and more of that state into your world more consistently, both professionally and personally. And I'm going to explore one specific angle here because there's lots of different angles. Certainly, I share more in my book coming out in the autumn, The Inner CEO, because we'll talk a little bit about that, because that it also comes into your personal life. Like when you're at your best, it's not just about work or sport. It's also about you at your best in your personal time. Because for a lot of people, that can be challenging because very often they'll use work or their sporting interest to distract their mind from just being alone and just being in their life because they don't like their life for whatever reason. Anyway, different conversation perhaps, but the key point I want to get across today is that you enable peak performance when your mind is at its best. Okay? And when is that? Like, when is your mind at its best? And this is the point. Your mind is at its best when it's free and it's clear. And what that means then is that it's not overthinking, it's not stressed, it's not even busy. It's free, it's clear. It's in its more natural state. And that might sound very simple, but what I'm going to say to you is, from my experience, 99% of people are not working in that way at all. Now, if you think about it as you're listening to this podcast, wherever you are in the world, whatever you're doing, I wonder, could you pause for a second and just think about this question? Like, what is your mind like when you're at your best? You know, when was that? When was the last time you were feeling at your best? And if you think back to what was your mind like, I wonder what kind of words would you throw out? My guess is you might say things like, well, my mind was relaxed. It was kind of a nice feeling with it. There was a free flow to my thinking. It was kind of effortless. I wasn't really overthinking about it. I was present. There was a nice, warm, cuddly feeling. It was enjoyable. You might even say, actually, I was kind of in the zone. A lot of sports people will use that phrase, or maybe I was in the flow. So that's kind of giving you a clue, I think, is the way that we are, in my experience, we're kind of naturally wired to be more in our peak performance gear or mode than not. And I think what's kind of very connected to this is I'm going to kind of flag two modes of thinking, and to kind of help you to identify maybe if you're going in the wrong direction, and maybe when you're going in the right direction as regards, when I say the right direction, you're going more towards the peak performance state, the peak performance mode. The first mode of thinking is what I'm going to call forced loop thinking, where it's more, I'm deliberately thinking, it's more analytical. I'm going into my head, and I'm very much conscious of thinking something through, analyzing, digesting. But with that kind of comes a kind of a heaviness. It's also tiring. It's not in the area of peak performance. I'm definitely actively thinking. I'm actively thinking. It's very conscious, even though I mightn't be consciously aware of how much I'm doing it. A lot of people I find aren't until I point it out. So the other mode then, which is more in the area we want to go in relation to peak performance, is what I'm going to call natural flow thinking. And when you're in this kind of gear, your mind naturally kind of goes into a high level of performance. And it's actually built into us. And most people don't realize, like, it's there in everybody. Everybody has it. Everybody does it at times. But because nobody's told you what it is or how important it is, you may not realize its value. Okay. Now, so I tend to think of, if you think about it like a flowing river, it's kind of flowing along. It seems like it's effortless, but it's flowing along. That's kind of the natural flow thinking mode. And maybe every so often to the side of the river, you might see a little branch of the river kind of floating off because of the design of the land. Maybe it goes into a little eddy. And the eddy is more the loop thinking. That's the forced loop thinking I'm talking about. So you're kind of going into this, I'm stuck in a mode, I'm thinking about this, I'm looping around in my head, my mind's busy. You're kind of going in a loop though, but without realizing you're moving, but you're going nowhere. Whereas the river is the natural, easy power, but you're moving somewhere. And that's kind of the picture I have in my mind when I'm thinking about the peak state. So I'm flowing, I am thinking, but it's much more effortless, even though there's a lot of power in it. Now, when I'm in that kind of natural flow thinking mode, there are two main sources to my thoughts. The first one is my learned thinking, or what I've learned. So, I could have learned information, I could have learned knowledge, or just from my experience, the things that I've learned over my lifetime. And it seems to me that when I'm just very relaxed in my mind, if I need to kind of, if I need some information, it will come in naturally to me from that learned area. That's one of the sources. But it comes in effortlessly. I don't need to go looking for it. It kind of comes in as I need it. And that's definitely my experience. And then the second one is what I'm going to call maybe instinct, is that we're something more innate. It's kind of intuition perhaps as well. And it's more, sometimes something fresh might come in that maybe I hadn't learned, that nobody ever told me, but it just in the moment it occurs to me to do something or to say something or to not do something or to not say something. But it kind of comes in when I'm in this kind of natural flow thinking mode. So when I'm free and clear and relaxed in my mind, what I know from the learning comes in very quickly, and it comes in just very easily. And then also my instinct and intuition really comes through loud and clear. Now, so if I leave my mind to its own device, it definitely works better. If I get in and try and interfere with it, edit it, it definitely is compromised. And I wonder, can you relate to that? So when you're like more relaxed, I think you would find in general that your recall is improved, your memory is improved, your intuition kind of comes through loud and clear. And that could be in any context, whether it's your personal life, whether it's sport, or whether it's business. So if you think about, for example, if you've ever done a job interview, and I think this is universal, where after the interview, you think, oh my God, I never said this, I never said that, or I should have said this and I should have said that. That's an example of it, where you're kind of, in a way, maybe stressed before and during the interview. You're kind of gone into your head a little bit. But then after the interview, when you relax your mind, you think of all the things that you wanted to say or that you should have said. So that's kind of pointing towards what I'm talking about here. It's that relaxed state of mind. So wouldn't it be interesting and cool to be able to bring that kind of relaxed state of mind with you into an interview, or with you into, say, for example, even to a key meeting or a sales pitch? Because the same thing happens there, if it's an important meeting or a big presentation or a sales pitch. Again, for a lot of people, it's afterwards they realize, oh, hold on, I never said this, I never said that. That didn't occur to me. I kind of stressed myself out. And that's kind of pointing to the same thing. People go into these eddies in their mind without realizing, I think, what they're doing and the consequences of what they're doing. And that's kind of what I'm pointing towards in this podcast, that there's a feature in our design as human beings that I think actually is incredibly clever, that if we don't really interfere with, I suppose, our design, and interfering means overthinking, over analytical, getting caught up in our heads. When I don't force that, then what I know comes through me better. And that could be in a business context, as a leader, as a business owner, just doing your job. It could come through. Definitely musicians will talk about this when they just get into playing their instrument and they're easing themselves, they will perform better, and they will very often more go into the flow. or the zone. And absolutely the same thing happens in sport. It's when somebody isn't caught up with their thinking, where they're not gone into these eddies in their mind, that they just play. And they don't think about anything during a game actively. They just play. And at the top level, particularly for the elite, this is something that they crave. They can't predict it, but in my experience, you can actually definitely increase the probability of going into a peak performance mode by understanding and seeing what I'm talking about here. And I think then the logical question for anybody is, okay, that's grand, Shane, but how do I do it? And like, give me the technique. And this is where now I'm not going to give you a technique, because I think like there are techniques to help to calm your mind. Anything that does that is useful. But the key chess move on the board here is understanding the role that your thinking plays in your state, in your sense of ease or not. So the key is to really see it. And so that's why sometimes you kind of hope these metaphors like the river and the eddy will probably help some people here listening to this podcast to see it more readily. And it's really to help even around the distinction between natural flow thinking, which is the main river, versus forced loop thinking, which is more the eddy to the side of the river. And we will go into both modes. I'll go into both modes still, but I do it less and less. And what's very comforting to me is that I think my natural mode, I now know my natural mode is the natural flow thinking. The other one is me knocking myself out of it. And the key really is not doing anything. In a way, it's kind of to stop giving attention to the interference inside me. Now, obviously, maybe on one level, I'm lucky because part of my job is to help people see these things in real time and to point them out and to try and help give them the space and maybe the information or the analogies or whatever it is to communicate with them, just try and help them see it. I was talking to a client recently who, certainly when we started working together, that they were so in their head that they just didn't know it though, because that's what they've always done. Hyper analytical, always in their head. I could relate to it because that's really where I came from. And certainly I've worked with sports people and golfers in particular. I'm thinking even now of a rugby player who came to me through a referral, was having a problem just with their general performance. And when we got into it on a very simple level, just helped them to realize that they were caught in a loop of their thinking. They had something that happened which had thrown them a little bit, and they got caught into this eddy. And they just were going on a loop of trying to answer and analyze this particular issue. And what I was saying to them was, look, if you just stop giving that attention, you'll move back into the flow of the river. You move back into this natural flow thinking mode. And then you just play. Just play, because the talent's inside you. You're getting in your own way now. And I will throw this out to you because I think it's a key point, and maybe it's your exploration in a different podcast, is that the giveaway for which mode you're in, whether it's the kind of the forced loop thinking mode or the natural flow thinking, the giveaway is tension. If you're feeling tension in any level, you've gone into that forced loop thinking mode. The indicator that you want to look for is ease, grace, positivity in your system, in your body, in your mind. So I wonder, as you're listening here, can you see a difference in your thinking when you're at your best versus when you're not? Maybe over the next day to 2 days, you could consider that, or watch yourself. And here's a humdinger. What would happen if you just stopped thinking what you're thinking? What would happen if you just stopped giving attention to perhaps something that's annoying you? Maybe it's a person, maybe it's circumstances, maybe it's a situation. For most people, they kind of create these little eddies without realizing the damage they're causing, because they think, hang on, I have to analyze it, try and solve it. Whereas in my experience, the solution comes from coming out of that analysis and moving back into the river. Yeah, here we go, Shane. Who'd have thought, you'd be talking about rivers and eddies, something like this. But anyway, for some people, it does seem to make a difference. It certainly made a difference to me. So I'm hoping as you're listening to it, you're not thinking I'm completely lunatic. A little bit lunatic is good, but you might still relate to what I'm talking about. So, last thought, peak performance is a function of a free, healthy, relaxed mind. It's its natural use. And What if I'm right? What if this is built into us? And all you have to do is just watch for tension. Anyway, that's it for this week. Thanks for listening. Ciao.